Welcome back to Shall You Proceed podcast. I am Erlene, aka Elise Main, and I am so happy to be here with you today. I have some good stuff today. I have someone I think you're all going to love and enjoy who's going to be on my hot seat today. There's some hidden gems about him that I'm going to bring up beyond his scope of what he's doing for everyone. I have the amazing Nick Bognar, who is a marriage and family therapist out of California. And I want him to tell us all the good stuff about men and codependency and making inclusiveness for in his field. Hi, Nick.
Hello there. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I am so happy that you are here with me today. You know, Nick, I love your energy. From our time we had a nice little chat earlier. You know, right. I don't really go along with many. I love energy is a big thing for me. So I have to have that kind of feeling. And if you don't feel it, it's hard to have that conversation with people. So I want to welcome you to my Shall You Proceed family.
Thank you.
Please tell everyone about you a little bit.
Absolutely. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Pasadena, California, just to the east of Los Angeles. And I work with all kinds of issues, but my sort of passions are men's issues and codependency. And codependency, for people who haven't heard of it before, is where you take care of other people until it kills you.
I think I have those issues.
You and every credible therapist in the world has these issues,
yeah,
right?
I think I have those issues. So tell me, what made you get into that area when it comes to marriage, family, and then, because that's your main thing, marriage and family, and definitely take care of men's wellness and codependency. But what made you want to do marriage and family?
Well, so marriage and family therapist is actually just sort of the title of the license, and it's a little bit outdated, right? Okay. It used to be called marriage and family and child therapist, but something like 80% of all MFTs don't see any couples or families whatsoever. Okay. Most of us see people on an individual basis, adults, children, and some people really. However, there are other people with other therapist degrees. They're licensed professional clinical counselors, and they're licensed clinical social workers. And the thing that drew me to MFT instead of those other degrees was that there's a real focus on systems, families, how they affect us, how where we come from makes us who we are, and the fact that if a person comes into my room as a client, when they leave my room, they're still going to go out and be a part of the system that they're in. So you really look at it as a whole system rather than one individual.
So that is amazing. I love that you want to take care of people. But I want to get this out the way because when I was researching you and looking you up, besides, being this wonderful therapist here to help people, I found a little hidden gem about you. You have a few albums out there in the world.
I do. And I tell you, Erlene, I wish I was as good a musician as I am a therapist. But I think anybody who has the opportunity to experience me in both capacities will say that my talents lie far more in therapy than they do in music. But I am still very proud of the output of those albums. So thank you for noticing them.
I was tickled. I was like, you know what? I have to bring this up. I don't care if he's uncomfortable. It's out there in the world. And
yeah, no kidding.
Once
it's out there in the world, it is the property of the world, right?
That is it. So let's talk about you a little bit. You're Nick Bognar Therapy, and you're out of Pasadena, California.
Yes.
So you do individual couples therapy. We're able to go to your website and I guess get a free consultation.
Certainly.
You're doing everything now virtually, which may be interesting with everything going on with COVID, right?
Well, I mean, I'm really lucky. I think a lot of people haven't been able to work during this, and I've been able to take my practice 100% online, which is obviously great for me, but I think it's also great for people who really need support during this time. And I think it's the responsible thing to do, to take stuff online at this time.
So let's get into a few things. Let's talk about men's wellness really quickly. I am a big advocate for men taking care of themselves. I really feel that we as women, we have so much out there for us to be taken care of. Right. And, self-care is a big thing. When you think of self-care, no one really thinks about men in self-care. We think of women in self-care. So what do you do? How do you bring men into the office, into the virtual office to seek help? I've had a few shows on this before, and I have male friends who are in the wellness field, and they're like advocates for it. Like, no, men need to seek out therapy.
Sure.
You need to talk. You need to, it's beyond the barbershop. It's beyond your friends. It's beyond that. You need to seek out therapy. So what do you do in your arena to bring men to that virtual couch to talk?
Well, I mean, it's almost on a person by person basis. I think that by meeting people, people learn what it is like to talk with me. And I think and hope that it is different from what people expect when they think about talking to a therapist. Mm-hmm. There was a thing for a very long time, and some people still do this, where the therapist sits very quietly and kind of looks at you through a microscope and takes notes, and that sucks. Like, who wants to pay good money and show up for that? Some people do, and it's lovely, but it's not for me. And I didn't want to be that way as the client, and I don't want to be that way as the therapist. So I think overcoming that sort of notion that people come prepackaged with, that a therapist is somebody who's going to look at you like a specimen, and then, sort of regard you from the outside, rather than maybe somebody who's been through what you're going through, or somebody who has empathy for what you're going through. In terms of bringing men into the room, beyond sort of meeting men and making myself available via podcast and, on the web for people to know what I'm like, a huge portion of my business comes from female partners of men who want them to go to therapy. And I won't even lie to you, like, that's a huge part of my business, is that there's a lot of times where men, and I've been this man too, on multiple occasions, the man maybe doesn't even really know that he needs help or that he would benefit from help. And the partner is actually the one that says, I want you to see somebody.
And I fully agree with you. I think women are the pushers when it comes to a lot of things. But what about the men who do not have that woman in their life to push them to seek help? So many of us walk around here damaged, hurt, needing an outlet, and we feel alone. And no one wants a stigma of I need help. And I think more so for men, you don't want to be that person, I need help.
Right. Of course. Well, there's no glamour in that, right?
Right.
But something I hear over and over again from a lot of the men that I work with is that, I actually really like this. I think I thought that you needed to be crazy to have this. And, to be crazy, number one, is not even a diagnostic term. But secondly, I think it should be reserved for people who are really, really out of touch with reality. And that's a really sad and scary place to be. But for most of us, we're lonely, we're sad. Maybe we're having a loss or a breakup, or maybe it's something psychiatric, a chemical imbalance that's making us sad. But whatever it is, you really can get by without therapy. It's just, you might feel way, way better if you get it. And I feel like it's 2020. If you have access to it, use it.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. It's easy to say, okay, you need to get some help. It's easy to say, okay, hon, I found someone for you. But what makes your practice so enticing? What is it about you and what you've done? Because we've all, like you said, we're all used to the ones we see with the whole sitting back and
right.
What do you mean? There's always been a stigma on many careers. Like, I'm a librarian, right? So people think librarians, well, I know me, I used to dislike librarians growing up. They were not friendly. I have no problem saying that you'd walk in and the glasses and the very stark clothing, and they just look at you like, you better not touch anything here. You had that feeling. Yeah. I think we all had the feeling by librarians. So when it comes to like doctors, oh my gosh, I'm scared. I don't want to hear the bad news. And for men, you don't want to hear the bad news. When it comes to not even your mental wellness, physical wellness, men want to get taken care of. It's a new thing, not a new thing, but it's like more and more champion now to get checked out. What have you done to shape your practice in a way to where men feel comfortable, families feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you?
Well, so one thing to anyone, I would say, who is afraid of getting the bad news, I think anyone who's self-aware enough to know, like, I don't want to talk to this therapist because I don't know what he's going to tell me. I would say you already know the bad news. You already feel like shit. I don't have much worse news to give you. If I have any news that you might be afraid of, it's probably good news. It might be really helpful for you to get a diagnosis. But my guess is you already know that you're sad or upset or frustrated or anxious, and I can work with you on that. In terms of making it, accessible for other people, I really try to keep in mind, because, I'm an enthusiastic customer of therapy myself. I've seen my own therapist for a really long time, and she is not the first therapist that I've ever seen. I remember what it is like to walk into the waiting room and not know who you're going to see or what they're going to think, and to know that you're going to walk into a room with somebody and you're going to tell them all this stuff about you, and they're not going to tell you one effing thing about them.
Right.
Can I swear here? Is that okay?
Yes, you can.
All right. They're not going to tell you one fucking thing about themselves. All right, I swear a lot. So this is good. They're not going to tell you one fucking thing about themselves at all. Right. And that's such an uncomfortable feeling. So one thing that I'm good at making people feel comfortable, because I understand what it feels like not to feel comfortable in that situation. I suspect that, and maybe this is something that I'm going to get from you and you're not going to get from me. I suspect that you're looking for, like, how do you get the word out there that men can and should come into therapy? And I'm telling you, I don't have a great answer for that.
I wasn't even going to ask you that, because I know that's a hard one. Like, there's because we're all different. There isn't a rule book on how to seek help and how to solicit, and there's no rule book, because everyone is so different. And that brings me to let's skip ahead to being inclusive. Now in society, there's a lot going on with the tension beyond 2020, beyond COVID. That's one layer of its own that's been rumbling, and now we're at a point of just okay, this is where we are.
Yeah.
So you have people who are recognizing right now. Earlier, let's say, because is it still 2020? I don't even know what day of the week it is, but like
we're almost there. But
we're almost there. You have people realizing they can't be in denial anymore about what they're going through. Men and women have realized, and children, how they cope, how they do not cope, what they can and cannot. The weight is different for them, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to be woe is me. I hate to say that, but you can't, because we're all experiencing this. But let's add another layer of the social, racial tension that's been rumbling forever.
Right.
But now that we're all sitting down at home, we're all in front of the TV, we're all in front of our computers and our phones, you can't run from it. It's everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And you're in an industry, you're in a field where there's very few who look like me. They're there, but it's not as much as the ones who look like you.
Certainly.
So, and I listened to your last podcast. Well, not your last podcast, but one of your podcasts was, I love the title of it.
Your podcast, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Oh yeah. So tell everyone the name of your podcast.
It's More Exemplary.
Yes, because I will say it wrong, people. Episode 17 was the whitest conversation ever. And what I loved about the whitest conversation ever was it was you and therapists, all women, I think it was.
It was five white female therapists that I'm very close with.
Yes. And I love the conversation because I am tired of having the conversation with white people. Because I can't have it. It has to come from white people who look like them to have the conversation. I can have it, but I don't know how to present it. I don't know how to wrap it. I don't know what to say about it. But what I'm asking in a very long-winded way is, how are you now going to shape your practice and be a person that not just people who look like you come to, because I don't know your demographic of your clients, but what are you going to do now with this new layer of illness that we have? People have now recognized, with the tension of COVID-19, being locked away in some type of way, not understanding what that is. And now we're all very sensitive to what we're seeing happening in the world amongst people of color. How do you plan to shape your practice to take care of those who do not look like you who may seek out your help?
Yeah. Well,
There's a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's a really terrific question. I just hope I hope I can answer it in a way that honors what I hope to do.
Okay.
Really and truly, I can't have lived that experience that people of color have lived. I can't live the experience that women have lived. I can't live the experience that LGBT people have lived. There's, I'm come from a place of remarkable privilege when you run the stats on me. Mm-hmm. But I will believe anyone who comes into my office. And so from the standpoint of on an individual basis, what I can offer people who don't look like me is I know that there is a world out there where people say that didn't really happen to you, or you must have been asking for it, or you are just trying to play the race card, right? I know that there are a million ways that people whose experiences are less privileged than mine are disqualified or invalidated in the world. And I have a stated commitment and personal commitment not to do that. That's really important to me. I don't know whether that would make anyone feel more at home in my practice. My assumption is, I think really and truly, like we talk about this in therapy school, and I hope they're talking about it even more now, although it was certainly covered. There's a thing in therapy called the goodness of fit, right? And the goodness of fit is how sort of demographically and in terms of values similar you are to a person, right? So if I see, and I take issue with the term good, but that's the term that's used, right? So if I see a man and he's white and he's straight, he's cisgendered, he's about 40 years old, that's, he was raised Catholic, he comes from the South, right? Like things that are very much like me, we would say that's a good fit, right? That's goodness of fit. And we might say that if I see somebody who's very demographically different from me, that's not a good fit, right? And what I would say is it's a good fit if it feels right for the client. And I think there are some people that really need to see somebody that has lived their experience or something like it and has seen and been seen in that way. And then I think there are other people, and these are the people that might want to work with me, who would have a corrective emotional experience sitting in the room with somebody who will say, I believe you. That happened to you. That's terrible. I'm sorry for the injustice, but I'm not here to invalidate it. And I know I can't make it better for you. But I'm here to reflect back to you that I know that you are telling the truth and that this happened to you.
And I think that's a lot goes with when you have people who are going through rehab. There are people, their sponsor has been through what they've been through. So it can't do the whole, you don't know what I've been through. And like, oh, I do.
Maybe I do. Yeah.
I do,
Right.
It may not be the exact same pleasure drug or whatever, but I've been there. I know it.
But I know what
I've
addiction
seen it.
is.
I know what it is. And I think that's reality. I think I really feel that in some situations, you have to have someone either who can truly relate, or is willing to say, honestly, and that's the issue that I take right now with the arrogance of people on the whole. They get so defensive and they're listening. They're not listening to the fact of, you don't understand.
Right.
Well, yes, I do. You really don't. Like when we explain to people what our experiences, and because even amongst people of color, Black people, our experiences are all different, depending on where you're raised, your family. So that's everyone, right?
Yeah.
So, but what bothers me is when you try to explain to someone what we're fighting for, trying to make you understand. Well, I didn't grow with privilege. I had to work 5 jobs, and it's like, there it is.
This session is over, right?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important in your field that, and I love the dialogue you and your therapist, your colleagues had, because it was lighthearted, it was funny, but it was real. Like, look, the white. It was the whitest.
It was the whitest.
It was the whitest because it's so true, and that you recognize that. That you really recognize that. And I think for the women on the panel, that it's another layer to that, because as a I'm not a white woman, but for white women, right now they're seen as a true threat. And the term Karen is hilarious, but it's a true threat, so it's another layer of for them to have that type of, I need people to understand, or just don't say anything at all, just stay silent and know that that's not my wheelhouse. I don't know what to say to you, but so do you have go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the Karen thing is really emblematic of a reckoning that white women are having right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's two levels of not understanding that we're allowed, right? And one of them is the level that we might have in our personal lives, where we might want to ask questions and seek information from people who are willing to give it. And then in the therapy room, I think it's a little more of a tightrope, right? Like I certainly don't want to be making up anybody's stories, but I also don't want to put somebody in the position of helping inform my values. I want somebody to tell me very much about their story, which I will believe and not take for granted. But I don't want them to feel any more than they need to, like they're in the position of helping, of like doing a job of informing the white therapist while they're there. I'm sure I'm imperfect in that way, but that's at least something that I think we're thinking about there.
Have you ever been uncomfortable with a client? So
I've been uncomfortable with millions of clients. What are you talking about?
What's your demographic though for your clients? Do you have people who look like me that you sit down and talk with? And since everything's been going on, how has it been prior to and now after these events?
Right. So I'll say, and again, because I try to be really delicate about client information that I talk about, everyone is welcome in my practice. I have and do see people of color. I have and do see LGBTQ people, but I would say that much of my business is white dudes that look an awful lot like me. And I think part of that is, frankly, just to call out the elephant in the room, part of that is that my services are expensive. And it's not a secret that white guys get paid more than other people, right? So I think that that's a part of it. Now I do some volunteer work as well, but I mean, if we're really talking about sort of the breadth of my clientele,
you're in California alone is expensive.
Yeah.
So it's not. I mean, don't feel. Don't tiptoe around it. It's legit. It's legit information. Where you're located, demographically, where you're located. I'm in Texas. I'm in the South. You're in California. It would be astronomical in New York. We know it'd be a whole nother bracket there.
Sure.
And overall, for people, they feel they can't afford it.
Right.
Not knowing that if you work full time, you get 6 sessions. A lot of times in a lot of your companies, you get 6 sessions to get some help. You can have those wellness checks. But we're afraid because you don't want anything documented. You don't want people to know what's going on with you, that type of thing. And also, 100%. Like you said, the pay between the ethnic groups is totally different. White men get paid more than everyone else.
Right.
So they can afford to have the luxury of, let me go once a week, whatever that may cost you for 30 minutes or an hour or more.
Sure. Yeah.
Because wellness costs money.
Yep.
You can do your own type of wellness where you just take a little break, you have whatever. But if you really want to pamper and take care of yourself, it costs money.
Well, and I mean, it's even more than just pampering. I mean, it is the experience of sitting with an expert on a sustained basis. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Even, like there's a lot of less expensive ways to pamper yourself, but this one is more costly in part because it involves somebody a trained professional on this. But I want to say 2 things. First thing is, I wouldn't fault anybody who felt like 6 sessions wasn't enough, because I'll say that the work that I do generally takes a hell of a lot longer than 6 sessions, because, how do you even get to know somebody and then get to know their problems and work up to their challenges? But the other piece of it, and a lot of people don't know this, like an upsetting amount of people don't know this, is that there's a lot of community mental health out there available to people. And so for people who can't afford sort of a retail cash pay therapist, and or who don't have insurance or who don't want, there to be a document with a diagnosis on it for them. There are in most communities of any size, other than the really super small remote areas, there's community mental health available. For instance, I do some volunteer supervision at a place in LA called the Southern California Counseling Center that provides the lowest cost talk therapy to people using pre-licensed individuals that work in this case. I mean, there's 25 supervisors, but I'm one of them,
right.
Who work under the license of somebody who's already been, credentialed. And that's something it's, there's a waiting list and it's tough. Like, it's not as easy as if you just have the money to stroll into a cash pay therapist, but there really are resources out there. And one of the guarantees that I make to people is that if you call me, I'm going to try to help you find somebody, even if it's not me. And so if there's somebody out there in your program that's listening to me and saying, Nick sounds like a cool guy, but I'm in Minneapolis, or I won't be able to afford that fee, I will at least try to help facilitate something to help you find something in your area that might work for you.
And
I think access is important.
I've noticed that with a lot of my friends who are therapists. They're like, I will help people find someone. It does not have to be me. I want people to get help. So wherever you're located, and what I love though with what's going on right now, the upside of being quarantined and locked away is if you connect with someone who's not in your area, you have this virtual way of having that communication. And as you get used to it, it's gotten better and better. It's become very intimate in some type of way.
Yes, in a surprising way.
In a very surprising way. And it's like, okay, you're still getting the same connection, but not having to lay or be laid down. Because I lay on my therapist's couch on a regular basis. It's like, let me just just let me curl up, kick my shoes off,
This thing has 3 sections on it for a reason. What am I going to sit on one of them for the rest of my life?
Totally comfortable on so many levels. But let me take you off that hot seat. I just really wanted to touch on that with you. Let's talk about codependency.
Okay,
I want to get into that. Let's talk about what is that codependency thing you're talking about and the therapy you help with that.
I'm happy to. Can I give you a little bit of history on it? Because it's kind of important. Okay, because codependency is one of these terms, and there's so many of them in psychology, that is really imprecise and confusing. And so a lot of times people use the term codependency when they're thinking of what we call enmeshment or like interdependency. So like people will say, oh, I'm so codependent when they mean that you and I are in each other's business all the time, right? Like, and that's really enmeshment. When we have too much involvement in each other's business, that's enmeshment. Okay. Codependency comes from the family systems model and the addiction model, right? And so there was a very, very brilliant therapist. She's still around. Her name is Pia Melody, who observed that in families, initially when we started, like a jillion years ago, when we started really understanding what addiction was, the thought was every family is normal and then it has an addict in it. And what we started to figure out was that families with an addict in them or some addicts in them are shaped very differently from families without addicts in them, right? And so what you actually have in those systems is a dependent. That's an addict, somebody who is addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, online shopping, exercise, whatever you get addicted to. And then everyone else in the family is a codependent because they end up sort of living their life in service of this person's dysfunction in a way. And sometimes that's really, really obvious ways, like dad is drunk again and somebody needs to call the office and say that he's sick. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's in more hard to detect and insidious ways, like mom can't handle the truth about what's going on with her, so I'm going to tell her, a pretty lie that's going to make her feel better and not have to come face to face with what we're dealing with, and all different kinds of things. And so these people in these families, some people are drawn into these families because they're already like this, and some people become this way in family with their partner or their loved one who's affected, is that they really learn to take care of other people above themselves. And the result is the person who is unhealthy is allowed to remain unhealthy and is in fact like nurtured in their dysfunction, right? Like they become a more enabled alcoholic, let's say. And the person that is the codependent often ends up in really serious neglect, emotional or otherwise. So that's codependency in a nutshell.
So, okay.
Okay.
I think a lot of us are codependent. I think so many of us.
Yeah.
I'm listening to you give this definition, and I want to like hold my head, like, have I been
He's
this person?
diagnosing me.
And it's not even about like even addiction. It could just be just thinking you had to take care of someone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that you think you have to do that, and you leave yourself behind, and you become the caretaker, and you feel resentful, but yet you still keep doing it. And now the person's dependent on you, and you can't do anything. You think you can't go anywhere. You think it's like, because I need to take care of this person, but why? Like, why did you do it to yourself? How do you treat that? Because I know from watching, intervention, all these things, I do. They always tell that person, you can always see, and I want you to go to therapy as well. Like, you have the son or the daughter who's addicted, or the dad or the mom, but they also, I insist, I want you to also, here's help for you too. Here's some help. Yep. How do you treat someone who feels they have to take care of everything like that?
Well, so if they are coming to see me, then they already know on some level that something's not working.
Right.
So sometimes it's a little bit about shining a light on what's going on. Like,
okay,
wow, is that working for you? Like, does that fill you with resentment? Like you said, because, on some level, if we look at it, we're going to notice it eventually if it's in there, right? Yeah. Like, wow, you sound exhausted. What is it like? You know what I mean? And I'm being a little silly, but this is stuff that once you get in touch with this pain, it's deeply painful, and it can be frightening to look at it because it can disrupt the whole family system, right? But ultimately, you get people to the understanding that what's not working for them is actually something that's in their control. It's not that my partner's, I'm going to make this up. It's not that my partner's heroin usage is the problem. It's a problem. The problem is that I keep giving them this money. The problem is that I keep paying their rent. The problem is that I am, paying their tickets, taking them to the hospital, putting my children at risk by having them around them, right? Like the actual problem is my response to it. Mm-hmm. And that's tough because when you're trying to be the best little partner or caretaker that you can be, a lot of times we draw power and self-esteem from that. So that's a part of it too, is like, who am I if I am not the partner that takes care of his partner, right? So it's a complex thing. Go ahead.
What does it look like? Because addiction is one thing, and that's difficult. I've never had to experience that. Luckily, I don't think anyone that had to experience that type of codependency. But what do you do when the codependency is dealing with someone who has a mental illness? Let's say you have a sibling that is diagnosed with something, or they have some type of anxiety, or something's going on to where you have to take care of them because it gets aggressive, and they only have you. I don't hate to use the word bipolar, but they're either bipolar, they're older, older parents, something like in the sense of, they're dependent on you. Say either they guilt trip you or they make your life difficult. There's so many different examples I can give, but what do you do with, it's not an addiction. It's almost like, I got to take care of them because if I don't know what's going to happen. And the person you're taking care of, or they've consumed your life in some way, and you have no life, and your life now is their paranoia is your paranoia now. And how do you treat that? What do you do with that?
Well, I mean, number one, I love it when a guilt trip walks through the door, because then I like to squash it like a roach, right? I'm telling you, you can't, you build up people's strengthen these things. Every person that is taking care of another person at their own peril has what feels like a very reasonable reason to do that. And a lot of times we need to examine those to see if they stand up to scrutiny. So if I don't take care of him, who will? Yeah, who will? Can he take care of himself? Oh, no, I don't know. Really? Is he 45 years old? Does he have a college degree? You know what I mean? Like a lot of times, and I mean this with clients and also people who are in the family system of clients that I have, I always bet on people being able to do stuff. I really, very rarely do I accept like, no, I can't do that, or no, they can't do that, right? Mm-hmm. In my experience, a lot of what we work on in therapy is just learning actually to understand that we can do something and that we can have agency. And sometimes we're up against something. Yeah, if you have let's say that you have a parent and the parent is ill, right? It might be that you have to care for that parent, right? And there may just be no way around that. But then I definitely want to talk with you about what other resources might be available to you to help you with that, or where you want those boundaries to end. Because a lot of times we just do it and we don't even think about it. It's just, the bell rings and we go do whatever the person needs, right? So everybody has a really good reason why they're doing what they're doing. And I just like to poke at it to make sure that it actually holds water.
I think I'm a poker also, because I always ask that question. So, but why? Why you? Because I think I've been there, and it's not that I took care of it. I'm the youngest of 4, and my mom and I were that was my road dog. That was my girl. You know what I mean? Yeah. So everywhere she had to go, I took her. It was just her and I, and she never wanted any of us to be obligated to taking care of her. She wasn't sick. She wasn't invalid in any way, but I just felt obligated because I'm the youngest. Everyone was married, living their lives, and I'm like, I can't live by herself. And she never asked for that. So I think I was mentally healthy enough to realize I'm not going to blame her or anyone for me holding myself back in some way to make sure she's good, because I knew she didn't ask for this. On the flip of that, you have some dynamics where the person who is ill, who can really fend for themselves, but it's a form of control. To me, I've noticed where their illness like morphs into like the blob, and it consumes the other person. And now they are now manifesting and living within the other person's paranoia or illness. And it's like, do you see what's happening? Like, do you see that they have so much control over you? Because now you are living their sickness.
Right, 100%. And that's the person that really needs therapy for this thing. If I can draw a really clean distinction between the two different things that you mentioned, this thing with your mom, and please call me on it if I'm making up something that doesn't pertain to you, right? But if you choose that, great. If you want to do that, fantastic. If that works for you and for her, God bless. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like ultimately the consequences don't bear out that this is a problem.
That's true.
If somebody is in that situation and they're like, I feel resentful, I feel exhausted, I don't feel like I chose this, I feel like I have to do this, right? That's
a big difference.
That's when I want to poke at it, right? Yeah, people can do whatever they want to do with their lives. That's fantastic. If somebody comes in and says, yeah, I take care of my mother, 7 days out of the week, I don't go, oh, are you codependent? But if somebody says, I take care of my mother 1 day out of a year and it makes me so fucking mad, then maybe I want to poke at it a little bit and see what's going on there.
1 day out of the year and you're upset, really?
Well, it's like addiction. I mean, I think this, like, obviously, like, addiction is bad for you. And if you overindulge, there's going to be health consequences, right? But health consequences aside, Arlene, if you drink 5 beers a night and nothing bad happens to you, okay. If you drink 1 beer a year and it fucks up your whole life, then you have a drinking problem.
Oh, yeah.
Like, consequences are a big part of this, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay. What made you want to get into that area? Because it's lined out. Like, you're lined out with codependency, men's wellness, marriage and family, like you have that in there. What made you get into that particular area?
Well, I mean, like a lot of us, it's a lot of stuff that I've had to work through on my own. I have had that experience in terms of men's issues. I've had that experience of not wanting to go to therapy because I was afraid of what the person was going to tell me, not wanting to need help, right? And when I finally did go for the first time, it was because I was just so fucking anxious and upset all the time that I, it was just like, well, fine, I'll do this. And then the first time it was like, oh my God, this feels so good. This person is so nice to me. She hears me. She hasn't judged me. I was judging myself so hard, right? And so, and I think in terms of, to bring it back to our discussion earlier, part of my development as a man personally has been due in part to the therapy that I've undergone. And it's been due in part to some of the really patient discussions that people have had with me on these issues, right? And so I don't come, any understanding that I have of other people's experience that don't look like me, like we were talking about, comes because somebody was patient and kind enough to explain it to me. And that doesn't mean that that's anybody's job, but it also means that I might be able to explain it to somebody else. And so, part of the work that I do is I often sit with men who look a lot like me, who are very curious about what's going on and not really understanding what other people's experience is like. And so I don't maintain that I speak for anybody else, but I can certainly say things like, from what I'm hearing from women, if you are going to be out late at night, you always have to be thinking about your safety.
Right.
I don't have that. I walk around in the middle of the night. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Nobody's coming after me, right?
Right.
But this is not what I hear from women is the case for them, right? Mm-hmm. And so shining a little bit of light onto other people's perspectives. So that's a little bridge that I hope to do. And in terms of codependency, I mean, that might even be a little more of a passion for me than those issues, because I love that moment of giving someone power that they didn't have. Mm-hmm. Right? I love that moment of like, well, what would it be like if you set a boundary with that person? What would it be like if you got your life back? What would it be like if you weren't, making excuses for this person all the time and you were just a super fucking powerful individual who lived life the way you wanted to? Like that, for me, that gets my bells ringing.
So you must find joy in when you have a new client and you're trying to just unlock those things. You give them those assignments. Y'all love to give people assignments. Here's your homework, whatever. Do this, do that. And they actually do it and they feel rewarded from it. How does that make you feel?
Well, okay. So I don't give a ton of homework. Mea culpa. Sometimes I do.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, if I get a few, as we all do, sometimes get complaints. I'll tell you, a complaint that I feel sometimes is, I wish that you gave me more homework. But this is the truth. This is just the God's honest truth that you're going to get from me here, and that I don't think other people are going to tell you. But this is what I have found to be true, right? If somebody comes in and tells me that they need homework, that is a person who does not need homework. If somebody comes in and tells me that they just want somebody to listen all the time, that's somebody that needs a homework assignment. Because whatever you were doing out in the real world was not working, and that's why you came to see me. So I'm here to help you try something different.
So that's why my therapist gave me homework.
Did you come in and say, I just need somebody to hear me, and then they gave you homework?
Well, no, not exactly. But she said to me once, you speak very like I would turn tables. I don't know how. I wasn't deliberately doing it, like not intentionally. But we'd have these conversations, and she said, you speak very like a therapist. Like, I'm really not. I don't know shit. I'm just, but I didn't work a lot of I've already done a lot of work on myself, but my problem was not being honest about certain things, questioning myself in certain areas. Like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Am I feeling what I'm feeling? Am, being very introverted and not putting myself out there a lot. And she made me do a lot of things to put myself, like, you have to go out once a week. I'm like, what the hell? Like, are you? Yes, you have to make once a week or twice a month, you have to go do something. And I'm like, well, I don't want to. Well, you have to. I was like, well, shit. Fine, I'll do it. You know what I mean? So, it was like that. So she pushed me to get out of a certain comfort zone that I was putting myself in. I found myself getting deeper and deeper into like a little comfortable little box that I'm really happy in. So I'm like, I can't complain because I'm happy. I'm putting myself here. And so she's like, nope, don't do it.
But I mean, but there was a but, or you wouldn't have been in therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy in this box. Nobody goes to therapy because they're really happy in this box and things are perfect, right? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. You talk about it or you don't, but like there was a little part of you, and this is the part that I speak to my clients about, not because I want them to feel bad, but because they don't need to be sitting in my office paying me money if things are going great, right? I want to hear what the but is, and I just want to work with you on it. You strike me, Erlene, as somebody who is very smart. And I hear you on that, oh, I don't know shit thing, and I don't buy that for a second. And you may have a diagnosis that I've made up, which I call smart person's disease, which is that sometimes when people are very smart, truly, their brain can do incredible things, and it can do things like turn tables on people because you're going to be smart enough to always be ahead of people by a certain step. Can make up fabulous rationales for things that aren't really serving you, right? Like smart people's disease, you can catastrophize in phenomenal cinematographic ways where like, this thing that I'm afraid of could be the actual end of the world. Not smart people can't really do that. They can experience anxiety, but they can't come to the like Spielbergian level of detail that really smart people can do when they're imagining their own downfall, right? So something to be on the lookout. Smart people's disease, if you don't have it, you don't have it, but I suspect you have the ingredients for it.
Well, let me clear my name here. Let me just say this. I don't do the dramatic I don't, but I do figure things out. Like I already think I know what the answer is. I still want you to tell me, damn it, don't tell me you know me. Like that kind of thing. Like you don't know
Got
me.
it.
You don't know my life.
Yeah.
I will say this for me, as someone who has gone to therapy, and I am a big advocate for it. Initially, I felt so much shame in therapy because I did not want to tell that truth. Because you already know the answer. Like you already know.
Yeah.
And that's where the turmoil comes in. You're beating yourself up, but you already know.
Yeah.
But what I loved about therapy was you don't know me.
Right.
So I am a firm believer in, you need to have friends, you need to have a good network of people, you need to have that type of thing, but your friend can't be your therapist. You know what I mean? Because either one, there will be judgment. Two, they're going to side with you all the time and think, and you're wrong and strong. You're right, and that's not the reality. Or they may be shocked by what you tell them because that's your moment of whatever it may be. But when you go to someone who doesn't know you, what are you losing? Nothing. There's no judgment. So they're going to talk to you.
The stakes are low, right?
Yeah. But for me, the hard part was getting myself out of that shell and being totally transparent with her.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to be. After the first 2 sessions, I said, look, you need to be honest. You cannot hold anything back. Give the whole entire story. Stop it.
Yeah.
Give the whole thing,
But that takes courage.
Yeah, it did.
It does, right?
It did.
Yeah,
and I didn't crumble. I had a good cry. I spoke my truth, and she still gave me the same sorry ass assignments that I had to do that I did every week. But I appreciated it, but I also feel like everyone I know isn't like me and others who did the work beforehand. Like I recognized I needed some work done. I needed to do some work on myself. I recognize that I can't carry certain things. I can't blame you for someone else or someone else for you. I knew that I couldn't because I saw so many other people doing it and how unhealthy it was.
Mm-hmm.
I am a natural observer. So I look at everything. I say very little in situations, but I look at everything. And I can read people so very well, unfortunately. It's a gift and a curse. Okay. And I like it and I hate it at the same time, but I read situations, I figure things out. But I think for me, my doubt started coming into my mind was, am I reading too much? Am I seeing too much? Am I fearful of being hurt? So I'm manifesting something that's not really happening. So I needed someone to help me line that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how much is my energy going outward and not inward, right? Is another thing. When we're hyper vigilant and it's I mean, I have a little of that myself. It's intoxicating to be able to read people and to be able to pay attention to all that stuff. But in my case anyway, it means that I'm probably also not paying attention to myself. And I might need to mind my own fucking stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because all over my face, I'm like, it's happening. Yeah, it's all over my face. I can't hide this. I can't hide the reaction. I can't. So Nick.
Yes.
What's up and coming for you? What's the big news for you? What's happening with you? What's going on with you?
Thank you for asking. So, so I'm doing the More Exemplary podcast, featuring season 1, episode 6 or 7, the Whitest Conversation Ever. It's as I don't know how you do 2 podcasts regularly, because I find making a podcast very challenging, but I am going to continue to churn out episodes on that. Let's see. I should have had a better answer for this question. I'm going to keep trying to hone my craft in therapy. What else? I'm going to try to get in tip-top physical condition.
You are hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing right now, I'm doing I'm starting to set up Instagram and stuff for my practice. I kind of want to get the message out. I want to get a couple messages out. And one of the messages that I want to get out is one that you and I have talked about today, which is like, there's no shame in asking for help. And you might actually just fucking feel really good if you get help. It might actually be something that you enjoy and look forward to. And even if it's not, your life might become something that you look forward to if you have the courage to get therapy. That's number one. I want to say out loud here, you're scanning my page here real quick. Can you go back real quick? That plant right there on the left, I killed that plant. And I want to say that I will do the opposite for you as a client.
It looks really sad behind here.
It was heartbreaking. I had that picture taken years ago, and I was like, man, I tried with that plant and I failed with them. But anyway, I also want to get out the message right now for people who are suffering and struggling. I'm here and I see you, and I want to help you find somebody, even if it's not me. And then I also want to say, for those of us who aren't struggling as much, right? Like some of us, I'm one of these people, I've been able to keep my job. That's fantastic, right? For those of us who aren't experiencing an active fight for whether our rights will continue to be maintained in this country, to help somebody else too, right? Like if you need help, get help. And if you don't need help, then give help.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
So that's
it.
I want to be more elegant than that, but that's kind of the message. Right? That's
amazing. It's good. It's all good. It's all good. You'll be better prepared next time.
Next time.
Yeah.
Next time I'm going to run this thing. I'll just send you your line.